Okay, welcome to the Stellify podcast. I'm always excited, but this is a great opportunity for me on a personal level. My guest today is Michael Wann. He's a natural astrologer, a synchromistic, an explorer of the hidden architecture behind reality itself. Michael is very well known for his deep research into the Susquehanna River, which is called one of the most sacred and strategically manipulated regions in the Western world. Through his lens of astrotheology and cultural symbolism, Michael shows us how everything, from ancient sites to modern technology, is part of a long game to shape human consciousness. But far from doom or despair, which is really important, his work is also about reclaiming our personal connection to land, story, and spirit, learning how to see with the third eye of history. Michael, recently I was listening to a chat and you on the Higher Sides podcast, and you were talking about 2020, and I was literally blown away with the intricacies and how you were linking up events from the Olympic Games ceremony to, in 2012, and to Boris Johnson, Piers Morgan, James Bond, Austin Powers, Mike Myers, linking all that to the pandemic. You know what, Michael? I was thinking to myself, this guy reminds me of Rick Clay. And then you mentioned Rick Clay. And I was like, oh, what? Because 11/11 was a big moment for me back in 2012 that took me to Rick Clay. And that's what woke me up. Rick, that Red Ice interview. And I thought, this guy is like Rick Clay. I've been waiting for this guy. Because I could imagine if Rick Clay was alive in 2020, he would have had something to say, and God bless and rest his soul. Whatever happened to Rick, he was a genius, and I'm sure you're very humble, but you're a genius also. So I'm very, very grateful you've joined me for a chat this evening. Thank you.
Well, first off, you're welcome, and thank you for extending an invitation. There was a point in my journey where I was doing tons and tons of podcasts. I would go on a whole variety of shows. I would say no to no one. If anyone would extend to me an invitation, I'd be like, yes. And then that chapter in my life ended, and I started another chapter. In fact, I would say it would be a different book. It was so different than my life before.
Yeah.
And that chapter or that book, that second book, has come to an end. And now I'm in my third book, of this trilogy or whatever, whatever metaphor we want to go with. And in my mind, I was like, I want to circle back to what I used to do before. I am ready to come back, and I want to speak to as many people as I can through this medium, and circle back from maybe whatever I shared, whatever my perspectives were 5 years ago, and what I have built upon that. And so I've been holding that, just really inside in consciousness. And then I got this email from you, and I was like, all right, game on. Like that
lovely.
That felt like if you could imagine the dominoes, which are stacked up and you push one and they all fall over. Like when I heard from you, when I received the invitation from you, Anne, it was all right. This is how it begins. This is how it begins for me. So I'm grateful for you for how you're showing up in my journey. So thank you. And that was a fantastic introduction.
Bless you.
It felt good to be seen. It's like, this is, I think, true for all of us, particularly those who are trailblazers, like who are literally cutting a path in life which doesn't make sense. And it's a lonely process in many ways, because the whole nature of being a trailblazer, making a new trail of all of the people who do that, or all the people who do that in different parts of their lives, it's lonely, and you don't think, like, no one gets it. It's just part of the journey. But to be witnessed, be like, wow, okay, like this is bigger than me, even if it's just bigger than me in the fact that someone else sees it. And yeah, that was satisfying to hear. Thank you for that.
You're welcome, and thoroughly earned as well, Michael. You know, you've woke a lot of people up. I know that a lot of my listeners are excited that you're coming on the show, and I'm grateful and I'm blessed that you've turned up for this chat, and I'm like, this is exciting
Right.
for all of us. You know, you like I say, the Rick Clay correlation for me is because I'm thinking to myself, I need to speak to Michael, really, because obviously Rick isn't here, but you're as close as I've ever come across, and that's a great thing, because Rick was, I mean, I only ever listened to the Red Ice thing, but that was enough for me. He was genius, absolute
Right.
genius.
Well, let me hop in right there. So when I heard you say that, like about the Rick Clay, like I totally forgot about that particular um, interview I did on the Higher Side Chats, and that was one of the, for me, like that was satisfying. It's an art form, like, you know, my approach is like research is art, different than any of the other types of art, which
Yeah.
I practice, and so to be reminded of that, I was like, oh my, that was so good. And then when you went to Rick Clay, I forgot about the Rick Clay part. And so I want to lean into that for a little bit. You
Yeah.
mentioned that Rick Clay Red Ice interview, and I can remember listening to it.
Yeah.
And I can remember what that did for me, like how I was inspired by like listening to Rick Clay.
Lovely. Yeah.
And then you know, to zoom out on that lens and to listen to what you're saying, and just to be aware of like other people who have said, like, I've been inspired by listening to your story, you begin to see the continuity. You know, I'll go back to this idea of trailblazers, and there's many ways of being trailblazer. And what we do is, like, yes, we're each on our own thread. And when you see someone a little bit ahead of you or who can inspire you, then it helps you move forward. And I see myself in a thread, which I was inspired by Rick Clay. He was obviously inspired by someone like that. That lineage is there. And you know, whether it's you, Ant, or whether it's someone else who's listening to this, who's been inspired by me or inspired by someone else who's inspired by someone else, we can begin to see this network, you know, this mycelium network in the ethers, where something else is being created simultaneously as everything is shifting in the realm, if you will. I just call it the realm because I don't know
The
what else.
realm. Yeah, I agree. I call it the realm as well, because I have no idea. But
Right.
yeah, but it's amazing. And this is why I do these chats, Michael, because I get the opportunity to speak to incredible people such as yourself, to raise my consciousness and my awareness of what's going on in my reality and in the collective reality. And I just love it. I mean, I do this for myself, but hopefully people will, you know, and they will take from it, I'm sure. It's very selfish reasons for me to have these podcasts, you know, but I gain a great deal from having these conversations. And technology, you know, and I want to get into that a little bit, but without it, this conversation wouldn't be having. So I've got to be grateful for that.
Right. Can we go down that path for a second?
Yeah,
Can we start our
absolutely.
journey down there? So,
Yeah.
okay. Technology. Um, so my journey, at least, as a, you know, a public figure, someone who's going out and like sharing his perspectives. It began with really two places. It began with like the revealing of the Susquehanna mystery, I'll call it that way. And that was also tied to this like real clarity in terms of like technology and the how technology is unfolding and where things are going. And at the time, I was very aware that I was speaking out of both sides of my mouth. I'm using technology to talk about the danger of technology. And I was always like, I'm like, this is what it is, but you know, how
Yeah.
do we meet that? So that being said, like I want to address that now, that same sort of idea, with just whatever new perspectives I have through experience. And for me, that really goes into, I want to begin with the Susquehanna mystery. I actually call it the Susquehanna Codex now.
Okay.
That's really for myself, and I'll explain why in a moment. So the Susquehanna research was my first step into sharing on public platforms. And I went on all these different podcasts, and then I started getting really friggin' bored of myself. I'm like, I'm telling this thing all over again. I'm like, I don't know. And I opened up within me. I'm like, I'm going to start going down like other avenues and like all these different sort of things. And I moved away from like the Susquehanna mystery. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, I know that's foundational, but I don't know how it makes sense in like the present moment in terms of what I'm investigating and so forth. So that being said, I want to go back. When I called it the Susquehanna mystery, internally, I probably held a posture of, I need to prove this. I need to show so much friggin' data points, because what I'm pointing at is such an like out there, absurd sort of thing, that even open-minded people are gonna like, they're gonna look at, they should look at it with skepticism. And so I needed to prove my case. The Susquehanna mystery was a courthouse, and I was an attorney, and I am proving this thing. And I didn't like that energy. Like, I can carry that energy of like, I need to prove it. Like that's within me. And part of my experience is like moving away from that and realizing, all of the ways that may not serve me anymore.
Yeah.
So the Susquehanna Codex is really the same sort of, let's say, information, but my internal posture has shifted. Like, it's moved from trial to temple, from courthouse to cathedral. And it's more like my posture is that of an invitation. It's either going to speak to you or it's not. And I'm really only interested in connecting with those who it speaks to. And if it doesn't, well, then that's cool. I'm just not putting my focus there.
Makes sense.
So that being said, tying back, should I go into a little bit of the Susquehanna
Please.
before I go to, all right. So imagine this, like this huge like this ball made by all of these like threads that are connected. And when you try to pull one of the threads, like, it doesn't really make sense. But if you pick up the whole ball, you see how it's connected. You see, like, this is one object, and it greater than the sums of its part. So the Susquehanna Mystery Codex is kind of like that. There are so many touch points which point to, like, really like a big pill to swallow. And what that big pill, the best way I can describe it right now, the big pill that's being swallowed, on one level, it talks about the way reality works. Like, it's just the way reality works. And then secondly, like, it puts like a new context into this relationship between humanity, what we call Earth, and narrative and story and myth. So I'm not saying that this is all a simulation. I don't know. I don't know nothing. I just know my own experience and how to be here. But using that as a metaphor, the Susquehanna River could be thought of as the primary channel on motherboard Earth. And we say that because the geology shows it as, or the geologists tell us that this is the oldest river system on the planet.
Right.
And so you're like, okay, well, what's that mean? If you look at our realm, If you look at this place which we're living in, hierarchy is significant into how this works.
Yeah.
And that's a principle of how of understanding this experience. And so, like, here's an example. Like, your earliest or your oldest experiences as an individual form the foundation of everything else that was built upon it. Your psychology is built upon all of this, which then, like, that's an example of hierarchy. When you go to a wooded or forested area, there typically is what's known as like a grandfather tree, or the oldest tree, and that like manages it. Like, in traditional communal ways of human existence, like the elders, like the oldest person, like we recognize like there's something like fundamentally significant about being the oldest. So the oldest river, like that's a like ding 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 ding, like there's something there. And so just to like now, just like in rapid fire, go down the next level of all of these pieces of the Susquehanna mystery. It's like John Dee, Enochian magic, the establishment of the British Empire, the beginning of globalism, like that's all connected right onto this river, like literally the history.
Wow.
You go, the birthplace of computer technology, like the information age began on this river.
Wow.
At the source of the oldest river is the Baseball Hall of Fame, and that connects to like the Theosophical Society. Like, you start to pull, that's all of these threads which I'm talking about, and it almost becomes like overwhelming. You're like, I don't even know where to go. What does this mean? So basically, what I would suggest now. So that's the like the preface. So where I am now is like, and the question I had before now was like, well, how does this make sense? How does this make context into actually being human, or learning how to be a human in this current context? Is all right. I'm going to have to go and tell two more things. So most people are familiar with the word Enochian magic, but they don't really even understand what it's about. The basis of Enochian magic, and I don't know if it works or not, I just know that it's the thing they tell us about. But what it's about says that through Enochian magic, you can control earth spirits, tutelatory spirits. That's what it's all about, is like you call in these beings from outside of the realm, and they can control they can control an earth spirit, and the earth spirit has to do whatever the external thing is that comes in, and you control the external. So it's like, it's a total thing about manipulating earth.
Okay.
So I don't know if they're tutelatory spirits. I know that there are many, many cultures that have practiced life that way, and it makes sense to me. But like, I've never seen the spirit of the forest hasn't come in a glowing stag form, like, and sat before me. Like I have to be at least real. Like, but my sense is there's something to it. And
I get you.
And if there is something to it, I would imagine the oldest river on the earth, what's the tutelatory spirit associated with that? Like, that's the hierarchy. If you're going to control something, like, that's the way you control earth. So
Interesting.
So like, I take that as an understanding. And then like whatever tutelatory spirits are, there's something connected, if that is a case, and I subscribe to that just because it makes sense. Maybe it's wrong, maybe it's not, but that's where I am. Whatever is connected to this body of water, and this body of water also includes the Chesapeake Bay, for, we haven't even talked about the geography of where it's so at. That is like a key, let's say, tutelatory spirit. Point one. Point two, let's look at reality right now. Like, reality is like, yes, we are moving in this technological direction, like full speed ahead, which really began, like, I pick up the trail in 1945.
Okay.
And it's seemingly moving us towards something, right? Like, whether you call it the singularity or transhumanism or something like that, I don't know. Like, to me, I always think about the Matrix movies. I'm like, well, how did they get all those people in the pods? Like, how are they seduced? I'm like, I would imagine this might be how it's looking. I don't know what's happening, but I have that awareness. I'm trying to make sense. And I don't think it makes sense that we go back to being Stone Age farmers. I don't think that's the path for humanity. Like, I subscribe to, like, life is what life is. We need to meet it. So my relationship with technology has softened in the same way that my relationship with the Susquehanna mystery of, like, from trial to like invitation, like, technology isn't necessarily my approach is, like, like you said right now in the beginning of our interview, without the technology, we wouldn't be having this conversation. It is my understanding, my knowing inside, nothing more than that, that technology as we know it now is a placeholder to something else, which is no longer anti-human and anti-earth. But for the time being, like, we use what we have, and we recognize, like, the quote unquote dangers, like where it's seductive and where it takes us off of our human journey. So that being said, the information age began with a computer called ENIAC. If you're an actual computer history person, you might say, well, no, ENIAC came after Enigma, which came from Britain. And, like, yes, there's a truth to that. But ENIAC is the first, what we would call general computer, meaning it can do different things, where Enigma was made to do one thing. But yes, there is a truth to say that Enigma does predate that. But, like, let's listen to that name, Enigma. And it does make sense that it's from Britain, because all of this, like where we are right now is byproduct of the British Empire. ENIAC is when it became like general computing, information age, like where it began. And that is at a key location on the Susquehanna River. And there's many, many other pieces. And maybe if you're interested, we could go down to it, detail points which connect this river, which is under the influence of, let's say, Enochian magic, meaning whatever happens on this river has to proliferate throughout Earth. That's what the Enochian magic is. So you would go, so, like, I don't know who the Who's are, but this is the narrative. This is the story. Enochian magic happens. It's like John Dee, British Empire, Jamestown, all of that. And this tutelatory spirit is now, like, I'm going to use the word under hypnosis, and has to do whatever's being said. And then whatever is birthed, whatever first fruits have been put upon this river, have proliferated throughout the journey of humanity. And so that's going to be computer technology, the distribution of electricity like we know it now, and what I'm generally going to call globalism. So that's where we are right now. We're in that world. We understand this about the Susquehanna. We understand it, like, intellectually, but we need to embody it. And, like, what's the purpose? So this is where I have arrived, like, with all of my actual experiences of moving around, all of my expansion of, like, what I thought was going on as that's gotten bigger. The point of understanding and connecting with this story and this narrative of the Susquehanna Codex is it allows humanity to connect with what I'm calling primordial hardware. All computer technology, like, all of the hardware at some point before its chemical and alchemical processing was like raw earth material.
Yeah.
And when you literally look at the geology of what is found on the Susquehanna River, and which is said to be some of the, I don't know how this comes from. They're like, this is the oldest land. This goes back to, like, Pangaea. And we know that because it goes through the Appalachian Mountain Trail, or Appalachian Mountain Range, which is, if not the oldest, one of the oldest mountain ranges on Earth. There's certain mineral deposits which are found here and nowhere else on Earth. And that connects, like, in this really, really weird, trippy way to, like, modern technology and all sorts of stuff. The point is, this is a consciousness-driven realm. This is why magic works. This is why subliminals work. This is why, like, indoctrination works, because this is a game to get is many human resources consciousness on the same page. Like there's no such thing as Monday, but the fact that everyone believes it's Monday, like that's what's important. They're all reading from the same script. And so we're all part of technology. We're all connected to technology, and technology is woven into this river. So as we can go back to that primordial hardware, if we can connect with it, if you can understand in consciousness and then embodiment, there's like you're grounded outside of their circular myth around this river system. And it allows the individual, whether they actually come and visit the river. I met with a woman who just flew in from, I'm going to do a quick pivot. I said, if you could actually visit the river, both of these things happened in the last 2 weeks.
Okay.
A tribe of Colombians, so from South America, Colombian Indians. I don't remember the name. They recently reached out to a woman who I know who lives right on the river, right in one of the key places in Pennsylvania. And they said, we've been given the call that we need to come to the river, to the Susquehanna River. Like, in a way, that would be the most random sort of thing. They don't know my work. They don't know anything other than whatever spoke to them through their language or their communication with reality, that they need to come here to this river. That's a way of being touched. Likewise, there's a woman who I know who's been following my work who lives out in LA, and she just sent me a message. She's like, hey, I just flew out to the sacred spot of the 40th parallel in the Susquehanna River and just want to let you know. I'm like, I'm right there right now. And we met up and we went there.
Oh, wow.
I'm seeing, it's not a big call, but there is a call to people who are hearing this invitation, whether it's from what I share or whether it's something else, to come to this river. Like that's literally happening. I'm literally seeing this. So
amazing.
Back to the story. Not everyone's going to do that. Not everyone, like, does that make sense to in their actual lived experience? But everyone's quantumly entangled to this body of water, this, like, the tutelatory spirit associated with the oldest body of water, Sequana, if you will, using the Gaelic term. And so to be able to introduce a way that someone can then connect to this, they're already connected quantumly, but now, like, to have a feedback loop with, like, conscious mind and something tangible, whether it's a story or whether like literally getting the primordial hardware, a Herkimer diamond, an anthracite, or a piece of Larimar. Like, this is a way which, as we move forward to in this, like, we're all the trailblazers right now, culturally, because we're going into an unmarked territory. This is a way, like a literal way, in the mystery of whatever this mystery is, to be grounded to the same tutelatory spirit, but outside of that field of what we're going to call Enochian magic, or that spell. And so that's kind of that's where, that was a bunch. So let me pause right now a moment to kind of sit with that, and maybe to ask me questions or to comment, and we can go from there.
Well, I mean, obviously this reality is, my eyes opened massively through synchronicities. That's how I started, trying to fathom and understand why 1111 as the example would take me to Rick Clay, to take me to, I was in my early 30s, Mike, I'd lived a very NPC life, and I can clearly define that as well. I can look back, I was a very different person pre-2012, totally different. My worldview changed. So I needed to explore this, of why these numbers or whatever events are taking me on a journey. And it's taken me to this point of speaking to you. Obviously, I wouldn't be having this conversation if it wasn't for 1111. That's a fact. And so this reality, what I say to people is, because my paradigm changed so much, and I can see the difference of pre-2012 and to after. This place is fascinating.
Yeah, it is.
So what you're telling me is like there's so much magic in this realm that they obviously, there is elitist or globalist, now if they consciously know it or not, are using this magic, like you say, that's coming from this river to manipulate a hive mind. Like you say, it's not Monday. There's no such thing, but we're all on it when that day lands.
I want to jump in right now. Like you said,
Yeah,
something which is so beautiful, and it's important for all of us to do this. Is one of the reasons why I spent so much time kind of like talking about my story, not so much as like, oh, let me share you my story, as much as like, let me give a demonstration. And you gave the same demonstration. We're all going through this process of like expanding our awareness, and we can then go and look back on our own individual journeys and be like, oh, look, there was a time I was this and now I'm that. And then to go and apply that, I'm also on a path, and at some point I'm going to look back at this moment, this
absolutely.
present moment, and I'm going to probably think the same thing. And so just like recognizing that totality, you're creating a feedback loop. This is a realm about feedback loops, and the feedback loop which is most important is that of awareness. Your awareness of yourself creates a feedback loop within this life, within the greater context of it. And this is the thing, like they tell us all of this. The principles are all around us. This is an observer affected reality. So when your feedback loop into yourself and your life has that witness, like now it changes again. It changes the outcome of the experiment, and we are beginning to learn that and see it and know kind of how to do that dance.
Exactly. That's how I totally on board with you. If I focus on something for long enough, hence the reality that we're in, I'm not going to bring these opportunities to me. If I continue to live my life pre-2012, going out maybe with the lads and having a drink of, or whatever, and that's my life, then that's going to be my reality. That's what I'm going to bring to my reality. So we have a choice to be curious. I like to be curious, and I'm grateful for the 1111 because it made me the the curious one, where I jumped down the rabbit holes, and before you know it, I'm landing on Mandela effects and this, that, and the other, and I'm going, what is this place? What's going on?
I ask that question every friggin' day. What is this place? And then, like, you said this place is filled with so much magic. I would just change that syntax just a little bit and say, like, this place is like what we have been told is magic is how this place works. And the fact that you've been conditioned to believe that magic is separate from reality makes you like you're disconnected from it. That's like part of the disconnect or the cut in consciousness. And curiosity. That is the key.
It is, but I think the curiosity, and you'll probably agree with me, because I find that as an adventure now. I can have my adventure in my living room,
right,
by being curious. I don't even need to go on on an airplane and take that adventure abroad. I can have, with my curious mind, an adventure which takes me to places, and I think, what is this place? I still come back to it, but it's incredible and exciting.
Yes, and let me go back. I want to go back to that word curiosity, because for me, I'm always like, I got to get to the bottom of it. Like, if I know that I have an assumption on what I think it means, like, I'm not at the bottom. I need to get to where there are no assumptions. And that doesn't mean that I don't have an assumption. I'm just aware that I'm holding an assumption. So the word curiosity, when I would hear like, the the sages, you know, you watch something on YouTube and you watch someone who's like up on a pedestal and they talk about the curiosity. And I'd be like, what the fuck does that mean? Like, what does that mean? Like curiosity. And then I discovered what it meant, for me at least, or like how I'm defining it, where I was clear with away from assumptions and it made sense to me. And curiosity is when you see something, the willingness to not make, I was always doing it, of like not holding the assumption and being curious, not like in a awe or wonder, which is a great way to hold it, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that. It's a curiosity is like, well, what is this place?
Yeah.
What would this imply about this place? I don't know what this place is. I don't know how I got here. I don't know anything. All I know is I'm here. All I can say for certainty is that I'm alive. I know that I'm alive and my aliveness is connected to this body, but I don't know where I am, but I can begin to understand how this place works so that at the way I'm approaching it, at least I can do this in like the way that feels the best in my aliveness experience. And it is through curiosity that the trail is, you begin to see it. Like so much of this is reverse engineering. How could I have gotten here? And if you reverse engineer, you're going to find out something, and then you use what you found out in the present moment moving forward. Like that's part of this. Like this system is self-correcting. It's self-rendering. Whatever this is, like that's how it works. And the posture of curiosity is part of the way you make your way through, because if you don't have curiosity, then you think you know it. And if you know it, the other truth of this realm is it's a self-fulfilling prophecy realm. And so as soon as you know it, well, you're going to go and prove it to yourself, and your life is going to be that. So like holding that curiosity, which is one of the reasons why, like, I like to think that I'm giving a demonstration of principles when I go in these conversations. When I talked about like Enochian magic and the river, like I'm being as honest with you and the listener as I am with myself. I don't know if Enochian magic is true, but I know that this is what they told me how it works. And then I could say, I'm either going to lean into this or not. A lot of things I don't lean into, but I'm like, this makes sense. That's me meeting life with just honesty and transparency. So that's like where curiosity, like my curiosity got me to, like, I've heard about Enochian magic, but I don't know what it is. So I did the research, and then it begins to like render. If I did not come to the conclusions, which I did, perhaps, you know, my path would have been differently. But what I really think what we're doing here is learning how to become human in this realm during the technological age.
Yeah.
And
Without a doubt.
curiosity is the key, or one of the keys to like discovering what your path looks like as an individual, because we all have that individual path.
Yeah, I totally agree. Do you feel also that maybe elements to your reality is scripted as well, that you are meant to be on this path?
Brother, that is like, that's that question every friggin' moment. Like every day I see something, and I'm like, who's writing this? So it's all with the posture. It's all the texture. Who's writing this? Those words will have a feedback loop to me based upon the texture I'm holding it with it. Who's writing this? Like kind of doing it with like an attitude of like, I'm being funny. Like what is this place? With curiosity is like, who's writing this? Like, is this scripted? Am I writing this? Because I'm definitely related to it, and I'm the only one who can read this. This isn't good. My synchronicities aren't going to make sense to no one else but me.
Yeah.
Who am I? Who am I writing this with? Curiosity. Don't answer that fucking question, but like to sit with it. So I asked so the scripted element, I don't know. I don't know what this place is, but I can see that there is an element of like, what is scripted? So this is something which is happening in real time, like in the present moment in my life. I'm seeing myself to such clarity that I'm in the exact same scenario as I was 4 years ago. The only thing that's changed is like the names of the people and where it is, but I can see so many things. I'm like, it's all the same. So the Groundhog Day narrative of Hollywood is like, you're stuck in a loop. You're stuck in a loop. So as soon as you accept that to be your reality, well, then you're stuck in a loop and you're blah, 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 blah. Or curiosity. Okay, this situation is the same. The only thing that's really different about this situation is me. How am I going to go and if I meet this situation in a different way, based upon what I learned from the last time I was in the situation, well, then the rendering changes. So I'm going to do a slight pivot on this, and I'm going to hand it back to you. So I had this conversation with a friend of mine just the other day, and he was talking about like black pilled, like, you know, the whole thing. Like
Okay. Yeah.
And I'm like, it's part of this dance. It's part of this dance. Like if individually, if you go through the conspiracy path, if you go through that, the conspiracy path is a path of consciousness. It is not a path of like learning the truth, because eventually, first thing that happens when you go down the conspiracy path is something which you assumed was true that you never questioned before. Then you realize like, oh no, that story which I never questioned before, there's another story. And what really happens is your consciousness expands. You're like, holy shit,
right.
Maybe it's not. You will continue to go down that path until you realize that there are infinite conspiracy theories that are in absolute contradiction from one another. And then you're like, I'm just fucked. And that's when you get into the black pilled mindset. And you're like, does any of it matter? Will anyone know? Will we ever get out of the globalist control? And so I think that's part of it as well. And that's a really good place to be. Because have you ever ridden a horse? Like gone horseback riding? And if you're on a horse, and particularly if you're on like a trail, like a mountain trail or something like that, you might get to a place where the horse doesn't want to go forward. The horse doesn't feel comfortable. And horses, almost more than any other animal, have this like human horse connection. Like they're absolutely energy creatures. And so when they're feeling that, and then they can't go back, and then a horse rears up. Like that's what happens is I can't go forward, I can't go back. The only way I can go is up. Okay. That's where if you are finding yourself in a black pilled situation, and this is true with like conspiracy, or this is true within your own life, you're like, I can't go forward, I can't go back. Your two options are I collapse on myself, I stay still, I freeze, I die. This is the end of the story. Or I go fucking up. I have to go in a new dimension, a new direction, which I haven't gone before.
Yeah.
And so that is what this becoming human in the technological age is. Like, this is as much about like being able to manage, like, it's fucked up to hold the space of being human in a scenario, in a paradigm which raised you to become as broken inside as possible. Because and this is the truest thing I've ever heard. It is not a sign of good health to be well adjusted to a sick society. So if you were born in this sick paradigm, which makes you anti-human, and you're well adjusted, that means you're fucked. You're well adjusted to that. Or the flip side is, I'm not well adjusted. I'm being true to how fucked up I am inside. And then I'm like, well, where the fuck am I? So the truth is, you take that and you go up. And that's what being human in this time means. And that is like knowing your inner world, knowing how you operate, recognizing the scriptedness, and like, how does the scriptedness make me feel? And how have I created this scriptedness? And how am I no longer fighting? Like, how am I no longer in the trial? And then how do I stay outside of the technology world and not become the transhuman, but still like go and meet fascinating human beings through what technology has given us? Like, to me, that is what, at least for me, what I want to talk about, and what the reason why I've wanted to come back. 5 years ago, I wasn't necessarily thinking this way, but everything I went through internally, investigatively, research-wise, has come back to go and share this additional perspective to all of the Rick Clays that are listening to this. Like, I'm a Rick Clay, you're a Rick Clay before. This is where it gets crazy, is like Rick Clays the Rosicrucians. He's the RC. Like, what the fuck is that? I ask that every single day. Like, I don't know what the Rosicrucians are, but the RC, the Francis Bacons, the Ben Franklins, like, it's embedded in the language. I'm going to say one thing and I'm going to stop. I know I've said this before.
No.
I'm going to go back to your 1111, and I'm going to introduce this as an idea to you specifically and to anyone else. So 1111 is working through two false realities. False reality number one: 1111 only exists on a digital clock.
Yeah.
If you don't have a digital clock, 1111 doesn't have that same zing.
No,
right?
That's right.
Like, if you just had an analog clock, like before there were digital clocks, like people weren't flipping out over seeing like it's 1111 on the clock.
No.
It didn't register. It wasn't until the falsity of digital clocks that we saw 1111. Now we're going to take it down one level further. There's no fucking such thing as a 24-hour clock. Like, it is as real. So this is what's real. Water boils at a certain temperature. That is or at like a certain condition. A certain condition, if you take water, if you reach that condition, it reaches bubbles. That is a principle of this realm. Whether you call that condition 212 degrees Fahrenheit or 100 degrees Celsius, it doesn't fucking matter. Fahrenheit and Celsius, they're not real. Like, they're accurate descriptions and they're real on that level. The 24-hour clock is not real, but it is an accurate way for us to like measure time. So all that being said, the synchronicities which you saw through the false digital clock using false time points to like there's something more real that's going to go through all of the falseness, and it's going to speak to the realness inside of you. But then you need to realize that it's not the 1111. It's the something else. You're just using, you now are able to recognize the difference between, like, I know synchronicities, and synchronicity can still speak to me through the false time, through the digital clock, but I also am not continually fueling that false reality that the digital clock is real.
Yeah, it's the breadcrumbs, isn't it? Whatever the breadcrumb is that resonates with you.
Yes.
Is whatever it is. It could be anything. And
the self-fulfilling prophecy of this realm, whatever you're holding, it's going to speak to you in that language. People get into this, like, I see it all the time. These people who are both arguing the same fucking truth, and neither one of them can say, like, it's only like we're talking about the same thing, but we're trying to argue that the way I'm understanding it is the right one versus yours. And like, it's just going to speak in your language. That's how the realm works. That's not a problem of the realm. It's like, I recognize how it works. So then it goes, what language am I speaking in? What do I choose?
Exactly, yeah.
That's the captain of their ship, is when they begin to choose, if they choose to, or they say, like, I surrender to the mystery of life and I allow it to carry me, and I will meet each moment in the present moment, but I'm not connected to it. That's a true way. That's a being human way of living. There's not like one way to be, but the one thing you do need to do is be able to recognize the difference between the layers of reality.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
But it requires the adventurer to decide on that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It
Well,
has to
you
be.
could choose that because there are people
Exactly.
so
Be
this
ignorant or be wise, I guess.
so let's go back to Rick Clay. Let's go back to Rick Clay. This is I'm pretty certain this is accurate. The story around him is that he took his own life, correct?
That's the story. That's the
And then
story.
the secondary story is no, he was taken out. He was telling too many truths. And then the third story is like, no, Rick Clay was a an ascended master, and he showed up at this time, and then he just disappeared. And like,
Wow, I've
like
not
there
heard
are
that
all
one.
these stories. But I'm going to go and lean on this story, and I'm going to lean on the version where he took his own life. And
Okay.
the reason, and so let's say that like the truth to that, and the truth of that is, he was the trailblazer. He was ahead of it. Like he his name is Henrik. Was Henrik the guy who does the red ice?
The interviewing, yeah,
Yeah, like
Henrik, yeah.
those dudes were like at the cutting fucking edge.
Mm.
Like imagine the trailblazer like going into the wilderness like before anyone, and then he gets eaten by a friggin' like a bear, because there are bears everywhere. Like that's what Rick Clay was, and he was a trailblazer going into the inner world, because how you do this is inside. And he like it is a lonely and it's a scary place, and if you don't know how to navigate that, like people take their own lives. Like you can
They
go and
do.
look at many, like they're often the most beautiful, sensitive souls, but inside is just like, I can't handle this anymore. That's
Yeah.
part of this journey. So like as we go forward, like is as individuals on the same path of being human, is the recognition like this is only you can walk your inner journey, but you can be witnessed and supported and recognized by other ones. That means the only way you can go through this, like, am I creating the script? Am I, what is my role in this? Is like you're going to go through some real heavy internal stuff, and it can be dangerous. And we're at a point now that through this awareness of like, this is part of the journey.
Mm. Yeah,
And
definitely.
these are some of the ways which you can meet that journey. And one of the ways, I think what you introduced into this is like the joyfulness of curiosity and being an adventurer on the journey. And part of like the internal discord has to do with like, get curious about it. But this is part of what we're doing as well, is like we're helping all of us who are becoming human at this time, discovering what that means. Is like, this is one of the techniques of going through those inner caverns you have to do.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed. And I think we're at a time of remembrance right now. I think that's what it is. It's remembering who we are.
What does
And
that mean to you? Like a time of
well,
remembrance, remembering who we are.
for me, well, when I look let's say look before 2012, I'm on a program. I'm running my programs. Basically, that's my life. So from my indoctrination to the traumas I carry, I am running on programs completely until I have that 11/11 moment, which then takes me to a new paradigm. Don't get me wrong, I've had plenty of traumas from 2012 too. However, it's made me become aware. I'm more an observer of
Mm.
the ant avatar that's playing a role in the Truman Show, if you like. And I'm looking at
Yeah.
this and I'm going, like you were saying, what's writing this script? Like say 2020 is an example. Now, some of my listeners will probably get bored of me saying this, but I signed for a pub on the day they shut the pubs in the UK for the pandemic.
Say that again. I signed for a pub.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means.
So a public house, which is a bar
Okay.
in the UK, they closed those on the Friday. I can't remember exact date now, but it was a Friday. And we signed for it as a business, as a new home. We were moving the family there. And we moved in the day they shut them. Now, I know I wasn't there to run a business. We lost everything.
Wow.
We lost everything because I refused to play the game. You know what I mean? But I know that's scripted. I look at steps leading up to that point of initiation steps to build me up in character, to be prepared to stand up at that point in my life.
Yes.
Which then took me to a breakdown in 2022 when we lost everything because I had shame and guilt. So my remembrance at that point was, well, who am I? Because I'm not the stories that I created from birth. They're all stories, the traumas, the indoctrination. You must go to work 9 to 5, blah, blah, blah. Society, systems that you're placed in. It's all bollocks. It's just bullshit. I'm none of those things. I'm not even Ant Critchley.
Right.
The true me is the divine, is part of the divine. I'm part of something else. That's the true me. Yes. But it's remembering who I am, because I am not a robot, but I've been a robot for most of my life.
That was beautiful. That was so like, and that's like, that's the process. Like I've heard a lot of people say like remembering and who am I? I'm like, well, and I'm not trying to be like I'm not trying to be a jerk, but I ask them, I'm like, well, what do you mean by that? Like I'm curious. I want to hear how you understand. I think that's a real good question, but I don't think people actually go and have an answer to it. And you do, and you went through the steps. Like, yeah,
it's initiation. I needed to go through them though, because I'm at a point now, Mike, where I want to help people to find their true selves as well, to strip back the layers of the programming that we're enduring through this reality that we're in, because I don't think we're meant to live this way.
Of course not.
That's hence why you're more nomadic now, and you are getting back to being human. We are in we're on a knife edge at this moment in time, aren't we? Where the transhumanism agenda is going to take in, especially children that are born into this with the phone in their hand. They're not going to know what it's like to be human soon if we're not the ones showing them how to be.
All right, that's so beautiful. Can I hop in right now?
Yeah.
Because you just inspire so much. I want to reflect back to you. So the first thing I want to say is what you're saying. We're using different words to describe the same sort of process, which all of like the trailblazers are going through, which is like what you called as remembering who you are. The way I look at it more so is same sort of process, but it's stripping away all of the things which I am not, and what is left. Like, what can you not strip away? That's who you are. It's not like you've always been that. You just need to go. And so yes, like that, and how you articulated it, like we could probably spend an hour talking about that, because it's one of my favorite sort of topics. But I want to go back to what you're saying about the knife edge and the transhumanism agenda and all the shit, which is so and the script. So this is a story. I don't know if this is going to happen, but I also know that this is a self-fulfilling prophecy realm. And so like, well, what is the story? Like this, okay, so this is the story which I hold. This is what this is. And it's not even so much a story I scripted as much as it is like, this just makes the most amount of fucking sense, because all the stories I actually scripted turned out to be disasters. But if I can go and just see what's actually there. So, all right. So there is a percentage of beings on Earth, what have you, and we're going through this process of remembering who we are, which is the same thing as what I'm calling becoming human.
Yeah.
Right. So that's happening right now. That's happening in parallel to like the spraying of the graphenite, whatever, like all that. Like, yeah, that's happening right now too. And this. So as like more and more people are becoming real about what it is to be human in this space of technology, like still using it. Like technology, the only reason I could have been nomadic is because of technology. Like the things that I've done would not have been possible, like without platforms of this technology. But then you've got like the other people who are just like the other extreme, child born with a phone in his hand, like probably conceived in a test tube. The moment it was like, no longer in utero, given tons of like vaccines and drinking all this stuff. And that's just like, you're like that. There's no way that could ever remember being human. That is not human. Like that's going to be like, that's a story that's happening as well. What makes the most sense to me, because the scripter who's ever writing the script, and I certainly think that it's us, has a wicked ass sense of humor. They're funny as shit. And this is a truth, slight pivot. When there's something in your life which you can't laugh at yet, like when there's something where it's just too fucking raw, like I can accept it, I can meet it, but I'm not ready to laugh at it. You meet that with honor. And at some point and you're still like, you're learning all about that. But when you get to the point where you can laugh at it, but still see it and accept it and see how it's part of like the script, like that's when that piece of your own internal journey has, has catalyzed or has turned into a diamond. So anyway, going back, this funny, we got the kid, he's 5 years old, he's brain dead, he's obese, he's just like, all of the awakened people are looking at this child like it's such like this is the example of all of the things we don't like, what's wrong in society. And because that kid doesn't fucking know any better, I think he's going to reach out with his finger, because he's so accustomed to the touch screen, and he's going to go, he's never seen a tree before, he doesn't understand that a tree is any different than his screen, and he's going to expect the tree to move in the same way that he expects the tree on his highly definition, and the tree is going to fucking move in our baseline reality. And all the people will be like, what the fuck? And the reason is because he believed in his heart, he truly believed that he could move the tree with his finger. He wasn't taught that you can't move tree with his fingers, and because his brain is all like jacked up from all the stuff, like everything's in integrity, and he moves the tree. And when that is witnessed by other people, like who are becoming human, and they actually see how malleable this realm is, and they're like, that is the pathway to like the technology and hardware which we know today will become obsolete when we actually realize what we said was the magic of reality is the fabric of reality, and we're fighting nothing. And this is how we move through this transition. The black-pilled person is stuck in that this is like an unfixable problem, but the way out is there's got to be something else, on a different way of experiencing, and it's not just like in your imagination, it's experiential reality. And that to me is the pathway, or one of the pathways in which it becomes manifest, when we actually live as human beings on this realm, utilizing the natural world with the same things we learn with technology, without all of the anti-human elements that are associated with the technosphere in this present moment.
I love that scenario that you put out there. That's like a sword in the stone moment, when nobody's expecting the sword to be removed from the stone.
It's friggin' Excalibur.
Yeah, exactly.
Like imagine that as a nugget, like the Excalibur. Like when I say like British Empire stuff like that, like I don't come at that with disdain. I don't come at disdain with globalism. Like it is what it is. This is what I was born into. Maybe none of it happened, but I also know embedded in that is a trajectory. And so that is like part of the Arthurian myth, like this idea of just what you said. it is a seed which has been implanted in the collective consciousness, that it's like, it's going to come from the innocence of a child. It's going to come from the last place you expect, is going to pull that friggin' sword out and show you this other way. And
That's
that
beautiful.
was given to us, that idea we can, this is a narrative world, and that narrative was given to us through that culture.
It's a beautiful way of putting it, and the people. It's like the sort. It's great because you've got the Merlin, who needs the Arthur to pull the sword out of the stone. So he creates that. Arthur is wanting to be king, let's say, but then you've got the people who are looking for the hero as well. So everybody is creating that point. So the human spirit will always want to create what's right for the human spirit. I'm convinced of that.
Well, I would say one step further, because you're spot on. Like, if you're actually being honest, the only conclusion you could make, if you're really curious about the investigation, is that you as the individual are an individualized expression of the divine. And so when you say, like, the human spirit, no, it's not the human spirit is creative. It is the divine spirit which is creative.
Yeah,
and we are divine, so obviously we're creative.
absolutely.
We could be nothing but.
Absolutely. And we can use this technology for our advantages to be creative. I was against it. I was well against it. AI was coming through, and I'm like, whoa, 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 this is dangerous, and I was going black pill. Then I was like, no, I'm not having any of this. And honestly, right, ChatGPT has made me more creative. I started diving into it, and it's actually elevated my creativity. And I thought it'd be the complete opposite way.
Yeah. I mean, we could go down. That's an interesting path, but yes. So I wanted to circle this back to the Susquehanna Codex also. I was like, I started with Susquehanna Codex, all this other sort of stuff, like bigger picture stuff, but it all comes back to the Susquehanna Codex, the understanding and consciousness. And then if you could do it embodied, whether it's like understanding what the primordial hardware is metaphorically, and then literally what you're doing as an individual who hears the whisper, who's like, okay, I want to learn this. I want to understand it. I want to be tickled by the story. I want to touch the stones, is that you are literally holding the next, like the primordial matter that became this false technology. Like, when that morphs, like, just like the false technology, yeah, there's some sickness associated with it, but perhaps there's a way that it is fully in harmony with the human and earth experience. And how do we find our way back home is for those of us that are holding that memory stone of the Susquehanna Codex and the primordial hardware. Let me grab something right now. Can you see this?
Yeah.
I don't know if the clarity is gonna gonna be good. So can you tell, can you see how sharp the edge is and how water clear? Like, it looks like a diamond. It looks like a cut diamond. A cut diamond is like the story they tell us, compress coal, and they find them, and then they cut them and they polish them, and blah, blah, blah. This comes out of the earth looking exactly like this. It's called a Herkimer diamond. It's just a type of quartz, but what makes it special is its water clarity and that it's double terminated naturally, meaning it's got 2 points. Okay. So I don't want to go down like mystical, metaphysical properties. I want to go and be like, just like totally like grounded reality, grounded paradigm thought. There is no culture on earth that if they walked the earth and they found like these stones like this just lying around, that you would not recognize it holds intrinsic value, whether as it relates to like commerce, like trading. Like, this would be very valuable. Like, someone would be like, yeah, I'll trade you for that if you're in a barter world, or maybe something else. Like, this is intrinsic value. This quartz, and quartz is immensely significant in the creation of silicon. Like that's what the silicon wafers and all of that is built from really, really high quality quartz. I don't know about Herkimer diamonds per se, but there's a correspondence to the river. These are only found right at the source of this oldest river, and then only place on Earth. And then this piece of anthracite, it's black as can be, is it's technically like in paradigm worlds, it's a piece of coal, but it's a very specific type of coal, the most pure coal, and it's 99% of it is found right in the Susquehanna, underneath like the Appalachian Mountains. And this is the literal precursor to what is it? Graphene oxide. Like this becomes graphite. Like if you go and deconstruct, like, you know what I mean by graphene oxide? I think I'm pronouncing it correctly. They get like, you take like actual graphite and then they nano cut one molecule of thickness from it, and then they use it in like, you know, high tech. That all in the geological processing of how graphite is created, the step before graphite, which is 99.9% carbon, is anthracite. Like that is the progression. So this is primordial graphite, meaning it comes before it, and graphite is primordial graphene oxide. So embedded. So this river, not only it's the first computer, it's like where IBM comes from. Like IBM is like as the computer industry began, they were the top dog, and they made all of their headquarter decisions, and their manufacturing was in Endicott, New York, right on the Susquehanna River. Like embedded in the mythology of our stories, the literal life is like, yeah, this is where the hardware came into reality. This is how it happened. Like I've been making videos about this topic recently, and it's fascinating. But the purpose of that is recognizing that myth and story ties into this body of water, this land, this Enochian magic. And you can go and get, you know, you go to a metaphysical store and spend like $10 and get one of these and one of those, and you're connected. You're already connected if you're on the internet, because the internet was built by the IBM System 360 mainframe. Like, you know, that's how it was created. So these are like literal ways that we connect back into that same myth, outside of it being a subliminal quantum entanglement, to like, okay, that's a story. Now I'm holding it. I'm literally back in alignment with it. And I see the bigger picture, and I know that there's a script which is pulling me out of it. And I'm remembering who and what we are.
I love it.
So I encourage everyone to go out to your crystal stores and like not only get these, don't get these for metaphysical, like what the properties are. Get it for like a way to reconnect back to where the technology began. I remember when.
Can I pull back a little bit when you mentioned about the lonely path? It can be a lonely path, and this is for you know, I presume many that will you know, listen to this podcast that are finding themselves aware of this reality being different than what they first perceived. How do you ground yourself, Mike? How have you managed to ground? Because I know that I struggled, my mental health struggled. You know, and it was a lonely path. I lost friends. My family members thought I was crazy, you know, especially 2020 onwards, when you're trying to, you know, save people per se, because your paradigm and your perception's different to many others.
Right.
How did you, during your journey, ground yourself?
I appreciate that question. I really do. And we're an hour and 13 minutes into this. So the only if you're listening right now, it's only people who are vested. So I'm gonna reward them, if you will. I'll open up. Let me go open up like behind like my inner world. So a couple things. First level is this. when I by just, and you've probably experienced this as well, but when I began putting out the type of content which I put out, held in just the way which I am, it elicited, like I put out a signal, like in a certain level. Like I went on and I was like, "Rah, rah, 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 rah." And then there was a feedback loop. And what that feedback loop was, like people who heard the signal and it resonated with them and they reached out to me. Like I do a lot of like one-on-one work with people. And one of the things which I've like ascertained through that journey is most of the people who I talk to don't have anyone in their lives who they can talk to about this sort of stuff. And I'm like, I don't know that. I don't know that, because all I do is talk to you guys. Like all of the people who have no one else to talk to, they talk to me. So I have this, like this beautiful, I've been given this beautiful gift. Like I started the signal, it came back. I'm like I can intellectualize that, but I don't know that experientially, because everyone who I talk to like sees it's kind of similar to me. So that loneliness, I personally don't hold. But that doesn't mean I don't hold a loneliness. I definitely hold a loneliness. And this is where it gets really, to me, this is like what I'm going to share. My path, the path which I took, you said that you were, what is it? I always get NPC or NCP,
NPC.
Okay. So I used to be in the system. I was like deep in the system. I was raised by the system. The system like treated me actually really well on a certain level. And, but I was also kind of like, I was also a little bit off base, or like off center with my way of being. So I didn't really meet the set. I wasn't like asleep per se, but like I was playing along with the system. But there was something inside of me which wouldn't play along. And it wasn't so much like out of like I see the ridiculousness, and out of like desire to take the right path, I'm gonna do something else. No, that's not what moved me in the direction in which I moved. It moved me. It was like, I'm so fucking scared. There's a part of me that was so fucking scared to do what they wanted me to do.
Yeah.
I'm like, I can't. And I'm going to run away from that. That's my loneliness. My loneliness is where that fear, like that fear is not me, but that fear was inside of me. And that fear, like, it started like a question, like, you know, that led me to every single thing in my life afterwards. Like when I left that world, when I divorced my wife and divorced that life, I had the freedom to go and explore everything that my curious mind was interested in and all this sort of stuff. And then after all of that, I realized that whatever it was that I was afraid of back then, it's still fucking in here. And it had nothing to do with the paradigm. Like the paradigm just brought it to the surface. Like what am I running away from in here?
Yeah.
And so how did you ask the question? You said, how do I ground that loneliness? So it's not, so I'm going to expand it from just loneliness to like, how do I ground the difficulties of being human? Like whether that is expressed in loneliness, or whether that's expressed in a type of fear, or whatever, like that stuff. Like this is when I was saying in the story that Rick Clay did take his own life. He undoubtedly in that version was feeling something which was so heavy, whether it was loneliness, being misunderstood, or whatever it was, like it was just too much. So the question is how is it not too much for you, Michael? Well, it's curiosity. Like there are always times where I'm like, all right, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. And I don't know what I don't want to do this anymore even means. And I'm like, I don't want to show up like this. Like all of those feelings. and then literally going through the inner process of curiosity. It's like, what the fuck am I afraid of? Why would I be afraid of that? And then like going through the process of like I know that I shouldn't be afraid of that, but there's a part of me that is. Well, if there's a part of me that is like, what is it believing to think that I need to be afraid of? And then to have this recognition of like, I can understand this intellectually, but I'm still scared as shit to feel it, to like actually go and face it. And like that process coupled with like this is the thing which our consciousness is doing to us in this system, is like we create these like complexities of like false belief and strategy and ways of avoiding pain and all this sort of stuff, and it's all tied together. And until you like see it, and then at the end of the day, this is what I think it is. It's like it all comes down to like literally, it took me so long to figure out what this meant, is to feel it. And I want to explain what that means in a moment, is like it's that process, and it's an ongoing process of becoming more and more comfortable of like not being afraid of feeling something. I mean, this is a literal thing when I say like feeling something, coupled with like realizing that's not me, that's something else. And when I take that away, because this is what I say to myself, I'm like, there were so many times I was like, I just don't want to do this anymore. And somehow I continue on. Something inside me is greater than that feeling of not wanting to do it anymore. And I'm like, that's more foundational. That's where I am. That is what I'm building on, that foundation. And that is this process of like being real with oneself, being soft with oneself, being curious with oneself, being able to understand how the inner world works, at the same time being grounded outside of the paradigm, because all the paradigm is going to do is reiterate your or ask you to double up on the strategies based upon all of the fears and false beliefs of what happened to your consciousness.
I so appreciate your raw and honest, open speaking. It's beautiful to hear, and we need more of that, you know. And I think I'm hoping that people will listen to you and be inspired. I'm sure they will. This. I know what, Mike. I could go on for hours with you, easily. I've got a million things I could talk to you about, you know. But I'm trying to, before we get to the point of obviously the services you offer, and you know, I'm trying to bring this talk down to a close, but I really don't want to. I'll be honest, because it's amazing. I've thoroughly enjoyed myself. What do you think being human means then? What is being human?
So great question. To me, being human is the natural state we would be without all of that, like what I just talked about, like loneliness, fear, whatever, like all of that stuff. When that is, maybe removes not the right word, but at least when you're not living from that, you are human. When you are not living, so you have that's part one. And part two is you are connected outside of the paradigm consciousness. That doesn't mean you're not part of the paradigm. It means you're connected out. You know what that demarcation between reality mystery and paradigm bullshit. And an example of that would be just the recognition that, oh yeah, 11:11 is just a digital clock, representation of something that's true. Like, to have that clarity. So the being human is the recognition of where the mystery is, and like not trying to solve the mystery, but to blend with the mystery without that internal, like, living from the mask, if you will. That's human. Like, there's nothing to do. It's what we are. The only thing to do is to get clarity, because we've never not been that. what does that include? I can speak to it much more. I don't even want to open up like the gender male female expression, but to me that's part of it. I can speak to it from what being human is, from a body which came with the penis, which means like I have external sex organs. That makes it so different. When your gonads are outside of your body, you experience life very differently than if your gonads were naturally inside your body. So from an outside of the body perspective, it is a mixture of being able to hold authenticity, like so literally expressing and knowing what you're expressing outside, it matches the inside. Accountability, you're not always going to do that, and just like owning shit, owning your energy, owning how you show up. Vulnerability, like that is a huge thing about being human, is just like you pointed out to me, you said to me, you're like, I appreciate what you're saying. Like that's vulnerability. Like, yeah. And then ultimately is like what I think we all want in every sense of the word, and this is a divine thing, is intimacy. Intimacy with another human being, intimacy like in all of the ways, intimacy with leaves and with trees, and like it's an approach. That is the approach that happens when you have authenticity, vulnerability, authenticity, and boundaries. All of that sort of shit, like that's how you move through this inner world stuff. When you learn that you're human and you're here in this realm, and to me, that's the remembering process. That's the remember, like what you said. It's like we're remembering what we already are. We're taking away these sort of these learned strategies for whatever reason, and understanding how the realm works so that we can operate it. To me, the human body is the pinnacle expression of biological technology. And we are on the cutting edge of what could be possible. But in order to do that, we have to be grounded in the stuff which I was just saying before, being here.
Yeah. And that's the challenge. That's the game. The dream, whatever it is.
So I want to, before we wrap up, I want to go back to, I used to hear people talk just like what I was talking. And I, as a listener, would be filled with a little bit of like, what the fuck does that mean? Like, can you tell me? Like, that was my attitude inside, because I'm like, I think you're just talking bullshit, because you can't tell me what that really means outside of abstract concepts. What does feeling your feelings mean? So that was my attitude. Then the attitude got a little bit more gentle, which is like, well, certain people are doing that different than me. What am I not doing accurately? What does feeling your feelings mean? So I just want to I want to throw this out as like a real tidbit. Like if anyone else has had the same sort of response to thoughts like that, as I said, like I'm going to be a little bit more specific, because I think that this is the key. My experience is this is the key to like that inner world. And it's the simplest thing in the world, but I never quite understood it. So let's say this, a situation, like an actual situation in Mike's real life shows up, and I get a sensation in my body. I get the sensation. And for me, it feels like a nervous stomach, like butterflies in my stomach. That's the fucking feeling. Like it's a sensation, but it's not really a sensation. But like that's a feeling. That's how Mike is feeling a feeling. Sometimes you don't feel your feelings. If you're so disconnected by that, it's any thought that's going round and round. You're thinking about it round and round because that thought is based upon a feeling, and you're so disconnected from it, you can't feel it yet. Like this is what the process is. But if you can feel it, like sometimes in life, shit happens and now you feel it. And typically, like when I have that feeling, it's tied to the thoughts of what's happening in my regular life. Like this feeling in my gut is tied to this shit which is happening in my real life. And then I'm like, oh God, when is this going to end? Like, let me breathe through this. Like, like that's how I'm meeting it. All right. So now I'm getting a little bit fucking more honest with myself. Now I'm like, well, I've felt this feeling before. I can remember in my life, I could go back 20 years ago, and I can remember like feel the same sensation. And my whole thing was like, I don't want to go and feel this feeling. Just like I'm saying, like, when's it going to pass? When's it going to pass? I'm going to do whatever I can to not feel that feeling. But now in the present moment, I can remember it's the same feeling. It was a scenario back then, which I know like played itself out, but I know that I can see how it's similar. And so I can recognize like this continuity. Who's writing this script? This is the same feeling. Step one is like, it's literally just like this. Like, when I said before, like this fear, which I was running from, like, this is literally what the fear was. Like as like a sensation in my body would come up as I would think about something I would need to do, like literally inside would feel like this. I think I'm going to die if I have to do that. It could be something stupid, like talk to someone or do like something that makes no sense to the outer world, but the inner world, it's like, I'm going to die if I have to do that. Makes no sense. And I was so committed to not feeling those feelings that I'm like, I'm going to go this way. So, okay, let's go back. This is how the human being works. This is what's in all of our systems. There was a point in your nervous system, in Mike's nervous system, in everyone's nervous system. And this is the simplest way. You were a newborn baby. Babies are just like all sensory, and they're safe with mom. And at some point, they're not with mom. That will happen. And it could happen because they were birthed in a hospital and they're taken away from mom, or it could happen they were birthed beautifully and they were like slept with mom. But at some point, there was embodied in everyone's nervous system a degree of absolute terror. I'm gonna die. That is like, it's prelingual. You didn't say this as a baby, but that was the feeling that was in there. It's in all of us. It's called, everyone has a different relationship with that. Some people that was expanded, more extreme, less extreme. It's not a comparison. All that matters is you. That feeling exists in every single one. Like the feeling which you're avoiding as an adult, which you're like, why am I so afraid to feel the feeling, is because it's prelingual and it was never felt. And when you actually, like, this is the process of letting it go. Is like, I feel it. I'm sensitive. I like realize like this is a truth in my body, but I'm not my body. But I need to feel it because I can't run from it. And like, guess what? It's not that bad. I'm going to be soft with myself. And I recognize how I am. And this is what that process looks like. And I'm going to like tie it back to one more thing and then I'll be done, which is that primordial feeling can show itself as loneliness. Like that's the birthplace of loneliness. There is, and I'm not trying to be an asshole. Like if you're someone who really feels loneliness, the functional truth is there's no such thing as loneliness. Loneliness does not exist in this reality. The reality is you are the individuation of the divine, which created everything. You are not separated from it. So you have to be from that. And from that truth, there is no loneliness. Like that is true. But that does not negate the fact that you are authentically feeling lonely. So you're like, where does that come from? And this process of like becoming familiar with it and understanding how to hold my energy and how to hold myself is like, that is how we become human. Yes. And it's the same for all of us, but it's different for all of us as well. And that is one of the things which we can do for each other. That is what you bring with this show. This is what I bring with my stories. This is what everyone does with like who is on this path. Like this is like the totality of ourselves becoming aware of who's writing this, how does this work, and all this sort of stuff. So that's kind of where I'd like to wrap this up.
And it's a beautiful way of wrapping it up as well, Mike. Are you still doing your readings? I know you were doing ceremonies. Still doing
yes. I mean, that's always changing. So Yes, it's a mixture. We didn't even talk about. I'd love to come back if
Oh,
you're interested.
please. Yeah,
I'd like to
please. I've
come
got
back,
so
and
much I want to talk to.
we're gonna talk. And what I'd like to talk about, this idea of what I call natural astrology, because I poke all the holes through astrology. Astrology is filled with fucking traps, but it's also filled with the truth, and it's also filled with a way of being authentic and true on this life.
Yeah.
So what I do right now is, like, I've got a whole bunch of, like, what I'll call a la carte services, which are more or less begins from an astrological perspective. But really it's a totality of a guidance program, where beginning with astrology, beginning with someone like filling out an intake form where they tell me actual life experiences and what it's like to be them, and we like compare that to the astrology, and then we talk about like identifying like what are the friggin' false beliefs which are you're actually experiencing, and like what the astrology is, and then this is what it's like to like have an inner world. You're gonna have to go, and like this is how you become familiar with it. Walk someone through that process. That also includes a whole bunch of other stuff. So I do that as a whole package, and then I do it as individually, because the whole package is kind of like a big number, and maybe not everyone wants to make that commitment, but I do it also individually. So there's that, but I also teach natural astrology. That is a necessity, as part of the program, is like understanding natural astrology is really like just attuning to real time. The timing, which is not the 11111. It's not like downloads from the Pleiades. This is like, I'm going outside. I understand the sky now. I understand how it corresponds to a natal chart. I understand, like, it's just giving me time markers, and I'm loosening up, like, you know, all of the paradigm, like this means this and that means that. So I also teach people how to do that. It's the simplest thing in the world, but we're so
Fabulous.
so I would like to talk about natural astrology the next time, but those are basically what my offerings are, is working with people specifically with starting with the natural astrology approach for the purpose of becoming human, to just like teaching people how to do natural astrology.
And how would people contact you to book that service?
Probably the best. I mean, I have a LinkTree. Like, LinkTree is my only real connection or presence on the internet, so I can give you that link, which you can have in the notes. Or it's always just best, I'd say the majority of people who I work with, they just begin by sending me an email. And we just kind of talk through it. I'm like, well, this is what I'm doing right now. Does this meet you? And then we schedule something just based upon what they're interested in. I've taught a lot of natural astrology courses, and I've recorded those. I don't have any scheduled for right now. Those are preferred, but you could get the recordings. There's like 7 hours of, I call it grounded consciousness. It's astronomy, astrology, consciousness, history, and conspiracy, and how they're all connected in order to meet. They're all the same. And they're about grounding your consciousness in this reality so that you can go and begin to step into the path of being human.
And
the
navigate.
Path always been on.
Yeah. Michael, this has been truly enjoyable on my side. I've loved every second. Like I say, I've got a million questions, and we might have to do a couple of shows if you're up for it, because there's a few things I want to get into. But let's do part 2, and let's get your natural astrology in there.
I would love that. I would really love that. Thank you. This has been fantastic. I appreciate you giving me the wide berth to just kind of like talk, and then so this was a beautiful re-entry for me back into the podcasting world. So thank you.
Well, welcome back, because you're going to get busy.
Yeah.
Right. Thanks so much, Mike. We'll definitely catch up really soon. I appreciate everything.
All right.
Thank you so much.
All right. Take care.